I'm Lauren Green. Welcome to Bias Bash. MSNBC's Chris Matthews is at the center of the latest scandal to hit NBC's news division, failing to mention the campaign contributions his wife has received towards her congressional campaign from former and current guests on her husband's show. Is Matthews letting personal bias influence the coverage of his wife's campaign? Well, joining me with media analysis is Cal Thomas, syndicating columnist and a Fox News contributor. Welcome, Cal.
Hi, Lauren. Well, it's a long-running and never-ending debate, as you know. Do the voting records, past associations, and political contributions of people in the news media influence the way they cover a story or deliver commentary? My view is that the evidence proves a connection, especially by those who, until they were dubbed journalists, were activists working for elected Democrats. The latest evidence, as you've noted, comes from Chris Matthews. Until he started working for NBC News, Matthews was an aide to the late liberal House Speaker Tip O'Neill. Matthews' wife, Kathleen, who's a former local news anchor here in Washington, is running for Congress from Maryland, as a Democrat, naturally. For the past several years, she's worked as a vice president for public relations for Marriott Corporation. Her husband, Chris, has said he would be, quote, transparent and fair in any coverage of his wife's campaign. Since that promise, Kathleen has received more than $79,000 in campaign contributions from prominent former and current politicians who've been guests on her husband's MSNBC program, Hardball. While Matthews has praised his wife on the show, the New York Post, reports he has neither mentioned her campaign nor uttered a word about the contributions made to her by some of his guests. The website The Intercept, which first broke the story on Friday, published a list of contributors who donated just before or after they appeared on Chris Matthews' show. These include a $10,000 donation from New York Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's PAC 2 days before her appearance, and $1,000 from Paul Pelosi, husband of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. California Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer gave $1,000 one day before she was interviewed on the show. Chris Matthews, who regularly gets awards from the Media Research Center for some of his outrageous comments, has said, quote, as a journalist, I also know how important it is to respect certain boundaries on my support for Kathleen, both in my public role and here on MSNBC, unquote. Now, the funniest part of that statement is, as a journalist, he's a Democratic Party activist masquerading as a journalist. Add this to the growing list of examples of bias in the media that few watch MSNBC as evidence that the public thinks of what the public thinks of that operation, Lauren.
Well, Cal, I'm not trying to condemn Matthews or even praise him, but, isn't this, though, an example of the kind of default incestuous relationships between politicians and the journalists who cover them?
Well, it is, but I think, in these cases, as George Will has done when his wife was working for one of the presidential candidates on the Republican side, whenever he talks about that candidate, he discloses it on the air. So I think if Chris Matthews is going to accept or have politicians on the air on his program who has donated to his wife's campaign, he has an obligation to say that. That's all I'm saying, and the public can make up its own mind whether his coverage of his wife's campaign or anything else is, as we say, fair and balanced.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Cal.
Thanks, Lauren.
And if you want to hear more media analysis on the week's top headlines, catch Media Buzz with Howard Kurtz, Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern and again at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Fox News Channel. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching.